few years back, my friend and I worked at the same restaurant by our school. One night, we got off pretty early due to how slow the night was going. We decided to go to Footlocker since some new Jordans came out recently, and the store was on our way to both our houses. The store closes at 9, but it was 7:30 at the time and was already getting dark outside. As we approached the store, we saw a group of guys standing on the outside of it, but we didn't pay any attention to them. I asked the people that worked there, are the new J's still in stock? And surprisingly, they said yes, so I bought them. My friend said I shouldn't buy the shoes right now, being that we are walking home during the night with a big Footlocker bag. I shrugged him off, and I did it anyway. After I paid for the shoes, we walked out and started heading home. Just to paint the picture, the Footlocker is directly across the street from a heavily wooded area, and Footlocker is in a row of buildings like a plaza. Anyway, as we were walking, we noticed that the group of guys that were in front of the store were now down the street on the street corner. So we crossed the street before we got to them. We were now on the same side of the street as the wooded area. As we got over there, we noticed that some of the guys from the group also crossed the street. Then one of the guys said, "What's up?" And my friend said, "Come on, man," and shook his head. Then looked at me and said, "I told you not to get the shoes." I was confused. Then the guys started walking toward us, and one asked me, "What size shoe do you wear?" I replied, "By what?" Then my friend told the guy, "Don't worry about it because it's not your size." Then the guy laughed and said, "It's not even like that." And all of a sudden I hear someone running out of the woods toward us. Then the guy that was talking reached for my bag, and a few guys ran out of the woods. I remember fighting the guys off, and then I woke up on my back and saw my friend laid out next to me, getting stomped in the head and his body was shaking. One of the guys grabbed the one that was stumping my friend, and they ran away. I remember it was about 10 of them. I rolled over, sat up, and looked at my friend. He was making weird gargling noises, and his face was bloodied. I tried waking him up, but I couldn't. So I stopped the next car that went down the road because I couldn't call the cops due to those guys stealing my phone. My friend was hospitalized for about 3 weeks. Only had a few stitches. I wish I would have listened to my friend that night, but I think those guys were looking for anyone or any kind of trouble anyway.
My dad and I went on a hiking trip a few days ago. My dad is a waterfall fanatic. He wants to see as many as possible. So he and I are hiking along a very pretty trail. We're hiking along a river. It's flowing nicely. There's mountains all around us. The trail is weaving around big, beautiful boulders. I'm hiking at most 30 feet ahead of him, looking for a spot to sit down and have picnic lunch on. And as I round a blind curve in the trail, I just freeze. Sitting on a stump maybe 10 feet off to the right is a guy, but he's wearing one of those colourful badger hoodies. With the hoodie pulled up, he's wearing a Halloween style bunny mask. He sees me and stands up right after my dad rounds a corner. We are all three sizing each other up in silence, and my dad addresses him. "What's up, buddy?" The masked man then tips his head as though he's deciding what to do with us. He then finally speaks, saying, "Oh, not much. You aren't the guys I'm waiting for. You have a good day." And then he turns and jogs off quickly. Strapped on his lower back is a large hunting knife and a pistol. We lose sight of him pretty quick. We hadn't seen a soul on the trail all day, and we'd been there for almost 4 hours. Needless to say, we leave the waterfall for another day and turn quick. Once we're off the trail, we report it to the local forest service and police, but they say they can't do much aside from keep an eye out for any suspicious activity. Now the guy had no backpack or water or anything, which makes me think that he either had it stashed somewhere or was camping nearby it. I hate to admit it, but I desperately wanted to ask the guy who he was looking for and why.
This story happened about 5 years ago. It was Christmas Day around 1:30 in the morning, and I heard my upstairs screen door open. I wasn't thinking much about it, probably that Santa was dropping off gifts, or that my mom was grabbing a couple things to put under the tree. My twin sister and I were the only ones awake at the time, so we heard everything that was going on. We heard the Christmas tree and the gifts being moved around, slow, quiet footsteps moving around the house, and a beam of light moving around the living room. The light was getting closer until it reached the top of my steps, and it just stopped for about 5 seconds and left. Since I was only 10 at the time, my first thought wouldn't be that some intruder came into my house looking around. So I had an idea and I wanted to see if there were any presents under the tree. My sister said I should wait until the morning, and that it should be a surprise. Thank God I listened to her. About 5 more minutes of hearing things moved around my house. I heard a loud, ear-piercing sound of my mom screaming. I bolted up. I ran up the stairs, and when I was halfway up, I can hear her saying, "There's a man in the house," over and over. Thank God the man got startled and ran out of the screen door. I saw my mom and my sisters getting hysterical over the situation. We called the cops. Within 3 minutes, the police showed up. Only my sister and I heard everything, from the moment the man broke in, to him moving stuff around, and to the sounds of my mother screaming. We really couldn't give a good description of the guy, since we didn't actually see what he had on. All my mom saw was that he was wearing dark denim jeans and a black hoodie with the hood up. We later found out that the man also broke into my grandparents' house, who lived down the street. The scariest part of this is, when before all of this happened, my sister heard footsteps above her window and thought it was a raccoon and waved at it for some odd reason. But now we definitely know it wasn't a raccoon. And if my sister didn't tell me to go upstairs, what would have happened? What would have happened if that guy saw me by myself?
Let me start by saying that I love camping. Anytime my friends and I come home from college, we loaded up our cooler with beer, grab some gear and go screw around outside. Unfortunately, when I was actually at school, none of my sorority sisters or friends ever wanted to go with me, so I often suffer withdrawals from camping. One day, the weather was way too nice to waste, so I grabbed my gear, hopped in my car I borrowed from a buddy and drove to a spot that's secluded yet within safety of civilization if I need to get help. Camping also creeps me out though, but that feeling is always outweighed by the joy of it. So I make a little camp and a fire going. I hadn't brought all that much, but I'm enjoying myself reading and looking around the area, that sort of thing. I got the feeling that I'm being watched and stopped dead in my tracks. I hear a twig crunch over to my right, but see a doe vault from 100 feet or so in front of me. I laughed at myself and went back to camping. I just kept freaking myself out though, hearing sounds just outside of the ring of light cast by the fire. I always get inside my head, so I struck it off and kept whistling and just enjoying myself. Around 1, I decided to get into my tent and snuff out the lantern. I've been slamming beers in the most unladylike fashion and smoking cheap cigars until I passed out. It's around 2 a.m. I hear footsteps. They sound pretty light and sort of timid. I think to myself that it's a deer or some animal, maybe a raccoon, but I'm on guard. About 30 minutes of sleeping with one eye open later, and I hear a rubbing sound and the tent fabric being pushed in a bit. I don't know what to do. I'm paralyzed with fear. I desperately wanted to go and get the knife and stab this person, but I think maybe it's one of my buddies messing with me. Suddenly, it stopped. I was starting to feel more secure because daylight's coming in about 2 or 3 hours, but I'm sure as hell not gonna sleep. All of a sudden, it's about 4 o'clock. I realise I should have my boots on in case anything were to happen. After having stayed up and keeping alert for a little longer, my friend's car alarm goes screaming. I sprint out of the tent. I got about 2 steps out before something grabs me around the mouth. I open my mouth to scream, but instead, the person stops me. I've heard that people can perform insane feats of strength with adrenaline rush. In my case, I just clamped down. His finger popped off almost. He screamed and pulled his hand away. He took off, running down the hill and into the opposite direction. I take off. I must have looked ridiculous, but I didn't care. I quickly make it into the car and speed it out of there, calling up my friends, telling them what's happened and the police, and get some real clothing. When the cops get there, they checked it out. The cops went out with a light. They brought me back some of my things that I left there. But what made me most scared is that right next to the tent was a gas can, and lighter fluid had been poured around my tent. The kicker is, they never caught the guy. So somewhere out there is some crazy guy that's looking to make fires in tents with people in them.